past has left me blind from what is right. And now I've fallen in a state of mind. If only this is something I can fight. I try my best to put things right, but it's easier said than done. I need to reconstruct my mind, start again and put the pieces back to what. Let's go back and try and do it right. Who said we can't? Let's make the time to work it out. That I can do better with the help from someone who knows just what went wrong. Let's start again. Let's start again. Let's start again.
Hey everyone there, I want to welcome the whole Pangolin family to this live stream, and thank you for attending with us. As you guys all know, this COVID-19 situation has impacted the whole industry pretty hard, and first and foremost, we want to wish you guys health and safety during such trying times. Take care of yourselves, take care of your friends, take care of your families, make sure you're staying healthy out there first and foremost. We know these are pretty trying circumstances, and given the situation, we think it's more important than ever that everybody try to stay positive. And we want you guys to know, we here at Pangolin, we're going to be taking action right now. We're not going to be sitting around dwelling on the situation. We're going to try to use this as an opportunity to provide educational content to you guys as our clients, so that when this situation is over, we're out there putting out better laser shows than ever before. So you're going to see a ton of educational stuff from us throughout the next couple of weeks. Lyra has put out a couple new quick hints tutorial series. We've got another one coming in a few weeks. Following up with that, we're going to have more live streams. We're going to have a few webinars coming out, as well as some surveys just to get feedback from you guys about what you want to see educational wise while we have this downtime. We're here to serve you guys as our clients, and we want your feedback. We want to try to make this as productive a time as possible. And then as well, internally, we're going through every process across the company, be it how we ship packages, how we fulfill orders, all that stuff, to try to make things better. And so on the same token, if you see things operationally that maybe have sometimes frustrated you from Pangolin, let us know. We're not perfect, but again, we want to take this downtime while it's slow for us too, to try to become a better company for you guys all as a whole. And basically just trying to see the light in a dark situation. We know this thing's impacted everybody. It's tough to get through, but together as a laser community, we want to stay close-knit, help each other. And on that same token, if you're hurting right now, if you need a hand, if there's something we at Pangolin can do, reach out. We've got a ton of projects going on. We're not sitting back. Like I said, we're going to be taking action. So if you have some downtime, if you need some work, reach out. There might be opportunities that we have to work with you in some capacity, or we might know of a project or a situation taking place in another part of the world where they could use some hands. So the main point is, if you need a hand, if you need somebody to talk to, if you're going through a rough time, know that we're going to do our best to have your back there. So, finally, we just want to kind of reaffirm the statement that we want you guys to stay safe, stay positive, and stay motivated during this time. And just know that your Pangolin family over here on this side is here to support you. So we've got a pretty fun day in store for you today. Lyra has been working on a show it's been a concept she's had for many years. Finally, we've had the time to put it together. It's absolutely beautiful. And after you see this, we're going to kind of open up a Q&A discussing the setup, how it was designed, how it was programmed. We've got Francesco from the Netherlands. A lot of you guys know Francesco. He's going to be here for the next few weeks, kind of helping with this educational push that we've got going on. We've got Calvin behind the scenes. Big shout out to him for organizing today's live stream. He put the whole videography together, and we've got Josh Pilon, our new marketing manager as well. He's going to be managing the social media feeds and stuff like that. So, we're here for you guys. So we hope you enjoy the webinar. Interact, ask questions. We're here to answer them, and enjoy today's stream.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Let's go. Want to play the whole show? Let's play the whole show.
All right, let's play the show.
Let me go sneak over to the projectors. And going.
I wake up looking in the mirror, wondering who is looking back. I'm so lost with myself, I just can't understand. I say one thing and then do another. My life is set without a plan. If only I could live for the future instead of living in the now. Let's go back and try and do it right. Who said we can't? Let's make the time to work it out. I know that I can do better with the help from someone who knows just what went wrong. Let's start again. Let's start again. Let's start again. My innocence has left me blind from what is right. And now I've fallen in a state of mind. If only this is something I could fight. I try my best to put things right, but it's easier said than done. I need to reconstruct my mind, start again and put the pieces back to one. Let's go back and try and do it right. Who said we can't? Let's make the time to work it out. That I can do better with the help from someone who knows just what went wrong. Let's start again. Let's start again. Let's start again.
Clear. Yeah. So yeah, that's the that was a show that I conceptualized, oh man, years ago, and it's been a hard time to find a chance to have 21 lasers in one space at one time, especially for a filming situation. So I can imagine similarly for a lot of you guys out there, you have a lot of your lasers are unfortunately not on shows, but you know what? They're in your shop. So just like in this case, we're here, we're programming, we're practicing, we're getting better. We have the opportunity to write shows and practice and hone our skills and have these in front of us in order to help.
Yeah. On that note, guys, if you're sitting in your studios at home, or if you're at your house and you've got a couple projectors, take some videos of some shows or ideas that you've created and share them online. Now's the time to get creative, kind of share content. So we'd love to see what you guys are doing with your projectors and Pangolin systems, as well as you're working from home during this downtime.
Yeah, and now is such a great time to collaborate, work together, and find cool new things, and just evolve your craft as well as evolve the industry. And basically, we might not be doing shows now, but when we come back, every show we can have better, and it's just going to improve everything that we have for our shows in the future. And now is just an incredible time with all of the lasers all the time. So yeah, this is, I'm obviously playing. I was able to get a bunch of lasers in here and set them all up and do this. And we're actually going to be recording this kind of officially in 4K and throwing it online soon, as well as some other shows from previous trade shows as well. So it's in a way, it's making the light of a bad situation and just pushing forward and is doing as best we can. Exactly.
So Lyra, you want to tell them a little bit about the setup we have here?
Yeah, so it's a little bit ludicrous. We have there's 21 lasers in the rig. You might have seen some pictures online from when I actually had it up with the lights on. And the entire show is on one single timeline, and it is all done just, it's kind of crazy. We have a Spectrum 30, 2 Spectrum 20s. We've got a couple Club Max 10s, a couple Club Max 6.8s, a number of Club Max 6000s, a number of Club Max 3000s in this setup. Right here is Club Max 6s in the middle and 3s on the outside.
And here. One burstberry.
And one burstberry, because we had to substitute one last minute. The center ones, you have, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 in a square in the center. Those are 6.8s. And then the top and bottom are Club Max 10. And then those outside big ones, those are both 20s. And the center is actually a 30-watt projector. So it is a bit scary in here, but.
A big thanks to our friends and partners over at Cavant. The lasers definitely came in handy for this for the presentation. So we just want to give a shout out there as well.
Yeah, and so this show I actually started working on many years ago. There is, let's see, it's crazy amount of tracks. I think it's over 50 tracks for the lasers. I think it's over 8,000 events in this 3.5 or 4 minute show. What we can probably do is we can do an actual deconstruction of this show at some point too. And again, guys, throw your questions in the comments, and we'll start to answer them soon. Another thing that's cool about how I've set it up here is actually have our Beyond server running for DMX control from the console. So on my MA, see if I can grab this. I have patched in. Each one of these is a Beyond server, so we have control of those zones. So we'll show that in a bit too. And yeah, it's just now's the time to practice and get going. So do we have questions coming in? Is there anybody have some questions?
Question that I personally had is more like seeing the timeline show itself. It would be good. We see your screen there, so maybe zoom in a little bit and show a little bit more about all the little effects and all the little details that you program. Because
yeah, we can do some cool stuff. There's if we can just zoom in on here, what I can do is go to one of my favorite sections in this whole show is right here. Is it possible? Can I play it?
I don't see why not. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. This section right here was done. Every single one of these looks very similar, but they're actually individually done because they all have a slight angle offset on them to create a circular curve around the whole structure. And you can see that in here. Yeah. And as well, each one had to be manually done because the colors change for each one differently inside. So this is one long event. Or that's the center one, but like the outside ones here, these events have different colors. So I had to basically manually do each one and time it in there. Plus there's a custom waveform for that bounce. So you can kind of get this clapping type of look to it. And each one of those in there has their own events on each part of the timeline. And inside of each one is the animation for the up, color change, and everything. So each one had to be manually done. But it looks phenomenal, and this look is one of my favorite parts of the show. Another one of my favorite parts of the show is in the chorus, there's a bit of a back and forth between something like this, right? So what we have in this really cool section here is you have these outside fixtures creating this, sparkly bedazzle, where the center has a color and texture to itself. So you have kind of a 1:2 area, and as well, those ones in the middle have a texture that moves. It's a little probably hard to see on camera, but even the little details matter when you make something like this. So there's slight texture movements. And also using the timing well. So if we go back here a little bit, you'll see these triangles, these cues that rotate. They're built, I needed 3 groups, but I had a bottom and a top of 3s. And so figuring out the math that makes sense. So I used 4 into 4 into 4, which allows it to do that math with the music correctly, and also feel comfortable to your eyes. And yeah. Right. And this whole moment, you can see it going real slow, but it's about that fast. So a lot of the stuff that goes into these kind of passion project shows can be really, really intricate. Like adding texture to these, adding power effects. Will you notice? Well, if you freeze frame, you will. But it's stuff like that which makes these big shows really feel special compared to other shows that might just have tons of animation to them. So this is kind of one of those looks which has those white on the outside that are fizzling. Plus you have a nice color combination in the middle. And so, yeah, all of these are just built into little events. Every single laser has its own track. In fact, and then the main 3 have 4 each. The circle has 2 each, and then all the ones on the outside have 1 each.
Because that was one other question that I read here. It's like the bus track.
Yeah.
Do you use anything with a bus track, or you?
Yeah. So we used, I think I used it a couple times in this show. So let's see here. These ones are color hits, so let's look at this. Yeah, so on the outside of the 12 outside lasers, I wanted to do this kind of clapping of white on those colors after I had programmed everything, right? So what I did is I created a bus. So in this case, this track is bus C. And then all of those outer 12, these tracks right here, I went in and I assigned these tracks to bus C. So in bus C, I created effects that do that white hit clapping. That kind of hi-hat sound to do them all at once without having to recreate each cue itself.
Save a lot of clicks there.
Or see, these are actually one long cue for this whole section, right? Instead of having to break it up into a bunch of cues or use high resolution mode inside of your timeline, you can use a bus to just do it quickly and do those claps and those hits. And I have a couple other buses. I don't know how much I use them. Like over here, the inner 6 bus. This is recoloring for this. And so there's a lot of interesting bits to it. And another thing to think about the ending is another really cool thing that right here. So watch how the math of the song ends up equaling the number of hits by the end.
So we've got another question from Brett McConnell. And Brett, thanks for asking. So Brett wants to know, I've never done a timeline show, but have done live shows on Beyond Essentials. I'm assuming it's possible to set the lasers up the way you want them when programming at home, kind of like they do in MA. So what do you think about that, Lyra?
Yeah, so the way that, if you look at the screen, I have a setup in the preview window that kind of shows it off, and you could use the enhanced reality preview as well. But the way that you do this, so let's find a cool freeze frame. That's a cool freeze frame. And what we can do is inside of our projection zones for this show, we go to the preview window and we set these preview window zones, these zones up in the preview window to basically show us what they'll look like in the preview window. So all of my programming, this show I programmed without lasers because obviously I don't always have 21 lasers as we've talked about before. So all of this was actually programmed without projectors at all and using the preview windows. So you can do that and see how it looks.
You can almost use the preview window like a small visualizer.
Right, you can use the preview window. You could also use the enhanced reality preview. And if you really, really wanted to, you could also use the Beyond Universe and set up a preview in there. I think that works a little better for live than it does for shows, but it's a way to do it. Plus, you could use visualizers if you wanted to. We support a whole bunch. But if you want to do it straight inside of Beyond, the best way to do it is just use the preview window and the enhanced reality preview to see your work as you do it. Another really interesting tool that you could use is the frame analyzer. This will help you determine if your cue is actually going to scan right or if it's going to look correct. I had a quick hints. Won't go too deep because I just made a quick hints about this, but I use, instead of a laser projector, I just use frame analyzer to help me know if the cue is going to flicker, if it's going to have issues.
See in the frame analyzer and how many points.
Right, how many points,
would be
the scanner
expected,
movements.
the amount of power that's actually used with the laser
Yeah, exactly,
projector.
and it'll help you make sure it's bright enough and not waste anything. So,
I don't know how far it's set up, but the engaged reality preview, is that something you can open again on the screen? Because
because of this build, it's broken.
Oh, okay.
Which is, one of those things with working in the studio and with the development versions. So I can't show it at the very moment, but I can show you where it is. Mm-hmm. And it's in View, Show Enhanced Reality Preview. Again, this is a beta build that is
image of what is going on in a real area.
Because we're trying to build BeamBrush into Enhanced Reality Preview, so it's just a current in between. So yeah. That's why we can't show it to you.
We've got another good question from Nisha, and Nish, thanks for joining us on the live stream. So Nish is asking, in timelines, I always want to spend extra time color coding my timeline tracks. Is that a tedious process for you, and do you have any tips and tricks?
So for doing it, I always color code it. What's really kind of funny is I view my show in stages when I'm programming a timeline show. And stage one is literally set up my tracks. And I color code them, and I make sure they're in the right order. I make sure I have enough. So sometimes in shows I'll have like tracks that I don't need. In this case, they're all right because I deleted the ones that I didn't need after I was done. But like sometimes I'll put 4, and I really only needed 2. So by the end, I'll delete them. But I'll add as many as I could ever want. I'll color code them, and I'll zone them. Put the zones on them. That's like day one. Whenever I work on a show like this, is I just do it because for me, when I'm looking at these 12 outer lasers like this, it's a lot easier for me to remember by color coding the sections.
And a small additional remark on that is what I used last show quite a few times is I made colors also inside of the track. So each individual event you can change the color as well. So it not has a default color if you want to highlight something, or you still need to modify this cue because it wasn't perfect in the way you wanted.
Yeah, you can also mark that stuff. And so that's like day one, quote unquote, for me when I program one of these shows is to do that. And then the other thing what I do is I throw the audio track in and I just mark it. So in this show you have these red markers. The red markers are section markers for me. So as I go through, I'll mark sections out when there's changes. And then the other ones I put in as I'm programming based on what I need them to do. But that's like when I start a big project like this, I always add every track I could potentially need, and then I color code, zone, and then do the audio and break the audio up into sections.
Yep. Another question I see here.
So the answer is yes, I think it's worth doing. It can be a little tedious, but I think it's easier to just do it all in one go.
Yep.
Yeah.
I see here Ollie, who has also a question. It was more like if we can hide tracks, because if he's programming and have a lot of tracks under each other. I mean, really hiding, it's not an option as far as I know. We can minimize them to get them the minimum space.
Right, so we can minimize tracks. The other thing you can do, the thing that might be a pain, is if you can't see the audio. So if you click this little dot right here, so if I unclick it, it's going to hide the audio. But I can freeze this pane here, just like they could in Excel, for instance. Or even freeze panes lower and keep certain frames visible.
And keep in mind that we can also move tracks up and down, even if it's temporarily with Alt-Shift and the arrow keys, and then we can lock them, so those tracks will always be visible, even if we scroll down if we want to compare two
you could move
to
tracks
each other.
around for sure. So you can always collapse them, but hiding, we don't really want to hide it because if you go to do a copy-paste, you might miss them, or if you're trying to move events, you might miss certain things to select.
Or if you're like Lyra and have 56 tracks in a show, I mean, you might forget that you hit in a couple.
Right. If I have 56 tracks, I might have forgotten that I hit a couple. So there isn't a way to hide. There's a way to collapse. And there is also a way, if you need to maintain like the top bars because you have audio on them, you can maintain that top bar pretty easily.
So Sophie Lamfer is she's wondering how many zones you used for each projector.
In this show, it is just one zone for each projector.
One zone per projector.
And then the way that it's kind of set up here, you know what I'm going to do? Let's do this. Turn this down. I'm going to just show you all these zones. And there's another key to this here that I use. We won't go too deep because it would take a while to do the full explanation. But let's pull this up here. What I like to do is I like to do my zones as easy as possible for a center point. So in the center point of the room, I try and make it so all of my main stuff, so in this case, the 3 across the middle and the 6 in that circle-ish, they all are straight onto a center point in this intersection in the middle. And then I added the outside 12 to cross somewhere before those other ones cross. So that when you do your like shows where you want to have down and up, you just position them in those tracks. And sometimes it's more tedious, but also it's easy to lose track of zones if there's like, 80 zones. Also, if you can do it in one zone and in your event, do the animation there, you're better off in terms of beyond calculation. So when you're doing shows that are this big, even, there's a lot of performance that goes into this. So minimizing the number of zones helps optimize the amount of processing. And so you can run at a higher frame rate and you can run better. So it's almost best to use the least amount of zones possible because for each beyond cycle, it goes through each zone and checks if it should be on, basically. And so if you don't have zones, the less zones possible, the faster your processing will be. And as I'm sure people have known, if you start to get to these high projector counts, performance can start to be an issue. So that's just a way to help optimize it. Right. Yeah. Keep it less, make them as big, and then zone how you would. And if you were at a place where maybe you had a downstage edge, I'd probably still do another zone for those because it's for safety purposes, So
Nisha's got a couple more questions, and thanks for keeping those coming, Nisha. We appreciate it. So she wants to know if you're using the effects list and reference effects since you have so many tracks. And in addition to that, how do you keep track of what is referenced? And could we make the process less tedious?
Okay, so for the cue list and the effect list, I use the cue list no matter what. The cue list is, in my mind, a requirement. Use the cue list. Get off of the old habit of using any other way. Use the cue list. You're going to be so much happier that you did. And
I mean, that's where the cue list is made for.
And so use the cue list. The cue list is your friend. It is basically a requirement. The For the effect list, I use it sparingly. It's not as, to me, I don't use it as much, but I do have a couple times in here that I did use it. Like the queue list, if you click on an event in the timeline that has a queue list bound to it, so like this one, it will highlight the one that it's bound to, right? So if you use an effect, you also click on it, it'll highlight the one that it's bound to.
It might currently be hard to see on the screen, but indeed, you select a track on the timeline, and in the queue list, you directly see which track is, of which the link is together, and you can edit and make these connections.
So, and then if you don't have any, you can always, on all these, you can right click and you can delete unused ones. So if you feel like, you're like, I don't know where all these came from, you can delete ones that might not be used anymore and clean it up. So for me, effect list is useful sometimes, but I don't use it as much. What it's really useful for is if you have really short events that are super quick, but you want to like do those events over a bunch of different tracks, over a bunch of different zones. And then later you're like, you know what? I really should have made that fade longer, like on the end. If you use the effect list for that, then you can change them all pretty quickly and easily. That's the best way to use.
We've got another question from Brad Kellogg, and Brad's pretty much wondering, how do you balance the colors in your preview window or enhanced reality preview together with the colors coming out of the projectors?
That's an interesting question. So if you want to try and, in theory, it's going to go based off of the PC colors, right? You could also, the projectors themselves, you're going to want to optimize. In theory, if you were to do it, you would use the test patterns to make the projectors be as good as possible. In terms of perfect accuracy, I'm not sure if there's a way to do it outside of adding a color effect on top of, like a coloring type of effect on top of your zone. So if you had a projector that was just an older one that you know was going to look a little bit more blue.
If we go into the settings laser preview in configuration, we can see here that we have the second option, apply laser-based color correction from the projector settings. So it's the same like the beam and animation map. It's like the color corrections you make in your settings will be applied into the visualizer as well.
Gotcha.
Good point there, Chisco.
Yeah, that's why we have them. I don't know everything, and Chisco doesn't know everything.
Francesco's
so
two people here. Francesco's the nuts and bolts. Lyra's creative. It's a beautiful combination.
So so you can do that. The other thing you could fake if you wanted to, you could go into a projection zone and add like a color effect alpha, and do like not a recolor, but an alpha red, green, and blue levels, which then you could level and change out if you wanted to, and then that'll show it in the preview. Any effect that you put in here will show it.
Projector as well on top of it.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's how you could fake it in the preview window as well.
All right, let's see if we have any more questions from people. I mean, it would be good if they keep coming.
So yeah, feel free to throw questions at us. If you want, I can also show off some cool stuff with what's it called? Beyond Server. I could show that off.
This has been just today. We got a few tickets in our support system. A few clients were wondering if it was better to control a laser show from a console directly from the console, just triggering cues off the FB4, or if to configure together with Beyond using DMX Server. And clearly using Beyond together with the MA is going to give you the most powerful setup possible. But it's a little bit more advanced. So let's dive into that a little bit, Lyra, and show the folks what we can do with the DMX Server mode, how it gets configured, and some of the neat stuff we can do with that.
Yeah, so basically there's always the basic way to control with the 16-channel DMX in on Quick Show or Beyond, but that's boring. We're not going to talk about that. It's very basic. Then you have control of FB4 directly from a console over ArtNet or DMX, and then the highest tier is to control Beyond using something called Beyond Server from a console, and that's kind of the high tier.
And to kind of preface this, when you're directly controlling a projector with FB4 from a console, we've got a content pack on there. It's 1,500 cues, and it's pretty robust. And you do have control parameters directly from your console over the FB4, so you can create some pretty intricate and nice shows. But the real power and the real creative freedoms going to come when you're using Beyond in the middle, because then you can really utilize the effect engine of Beyond from the convenience of your desk. And it's going to give you, as the operator, the highest degree of creative freedom possible.
Right. So the main benefits going from direct FP4 control to Beyond Server is in Beyond Server, what we do is we assign a zone a DMX address. So if we go into here, we can go into our settings, and you'll see some extra terminology here. So this is the address at universe. So in this case, we have this one is assigned to channel 101 at universe 2. And under advanced here, you can select to turn it into a Beyond Server zone. Click which DMX input and give it an address. And so for each one of these, I've added that. And then on our console here, if I can just pull it up, in our patch, if I can find my mouse, we have put in the Beyond Server here, so we have all 21 lasers are set up and patched in the console, just running over ArtNet and the same computer. And then inside of Beyond, we have our workspace. So what this does is it creates an instance of Beyond for each zone. So you can select a different cue for each zone. You can select different effect for each zone. You can choose different brightness level, color overrides, and everything here. Basically, each zone and Beyond can become a fixture. And we can have a fixture which is about 50 channels. And what that allows us to do is use the quick effects. It allows us to use all the cues in our grid. It allows us to use all live parameters over on the right side here, independently of each zone. So this is fantastic, because if we go over here, we can turn this off. And inside of our MA, what we can do is we'll go to our selections here, and we will select the Beyond servers, right? And let's just start with the outer ones. So let's do a clear selection. Let's do it this way for wing power. Okay. We'll give those dimmer, and now what we'll do is we'll give these a gobo of, say, page 4 and Q, page 4, excuse me, Q 1, and then I just want to do in Beyond, DMX in. So now what this does is you can see over here, it starts to do these instances for each zone. So this selection right here is completely on the console. So if I were to go back into my console, sorry we only have one screen to show you, so it'll be a little, won't be immediate. All of the things like RGB color for each one can be in here and everything like that. And the best part about all of this is if we go into Beyond here, we have this thing called physics. Now, obviously, there's a limitation for ArtNet frames per second that lasers are way better at than lighting desks are, right? So our lasers can scan at 70 FPS, but ArtNet's only going to come into the console at, well, with MA, it only sends 1 FPS if there's nothing moving. So with physics, what we can do is we can smooth it out. So if I create, back in my MA here, we will just make this back to white so it's nice and, oops, sorry, these are other than the channels. Original color, and we'll just do, we'll shape this down on master size to maybe 70, and you can see it moving in a way that is physics, right? And so what's really, really great, so now if we add some sort of effect like this, the movements are going to be just as smooth as if they're coming from a physical object and not just from DMX. So if you've ever used the FP4, the limitation is in ArtNet where frame rate is not super high. But because Beyond is an entire processor, we're able to interpolate and smooth it all out.
And sort of comment a little bit. I mean, you came from a lighting background, and kind of comment about how you use the DMX server and how it's enhanced your own creativity when you're designing shows that need to be ran in that format.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to Beyond Server, it's kind of the right answer for anybody who really wants to do it the best possible way with a console, right? So it's about as perfect as it gets because you get the interpolation, so it's nice and smooth. You have every element of Beyond at the console. It doesn't take up 4 million channels. It's only 50 channels per, or 32 if you want to lose a few parameters, which is way more efficient than other options on the market. And you don't have to eat up all of your things. And just the ability to go in and then, because we're just pulling from the workspace, if you want to make a new queue, you just make a new queue. And you can pull that up.
I mean, I think there's been a big misconception too, you know, that it's difficult to set up or difficult to use. But I mean, you were using it on Chemical Brothers tour for a while there, Francesco.
First time ready. You
were just with Jean-Michel Jarre over in Saudi, and you guys were using similar setups there. So,
but what I mainly think about is if we have control directly to the FB4 without the use of Beyond, we need to storage the content on a memory card. So it's something that is pre-generated in advance. As soon as we use live Beyond, everything is kind of possible because Beyond calculates every frame real time. It could even be an interactive thing that is changed by some other inputs, like whatever it could be as an incoming signal. But it's because it's a live processing software and not something that's pre-generated on a content memory card. We are more flexible inside of the software.
Yeah, and so we can use that content pack in our inside of Beyond. So because with the content pack we provided that workspace, so you can pull that up inside of Beyond and just use those queues, as well as all of the ones that you've made. You don't have to optimize them for export. You don't have to think about any of that. You just pull them right up from your workspace without even having to change anything. And so all these other ones that I've made in the past, like I could just pull those up right from the console by using, page 24. Q22, so we could go in there, page 24, Q, where is it? 22, and then that's that queue that I built inside without having to resave it, upload to the FB4, and pull it up, and it's just as smooth as it would be whether running directly from the software.
Another series of questions we often get, especially from our lighting designer clients, is how do you do this safely from our console? How do we set up our beam attenuation maps? How do we configure our zones? How do we know that when we're running the show from the desk, it's designed in a safe and compliant manner? And there's some additional tools within Beyond that'll help you do that. So maybe we'll touch on those a little bit.
Right. So all of the safety features of Beyond, because Beyond Server from the console is interfacing with Beyond, the reason why we're not frying this camera right now is because we have our beam attenuation map set up, right? And the console is just telling those zones to output. So those zones, safety features like beam attenuation map, changing of scan rate or anything is done natively. So you don't have to, like if you want to make sure that it's safe, you're selecting zones. Plus, with Beyond Server, you can have different zones on the same projector. You could have 3 zones on a projector and control them all independently from a console by just assigning them to different profiles or different fixture IDs or just different pieces of the patch.
So our friend Matteo from Italy, shout out to you, Matteo. Hope everything's going okay out there. So Matteo's asking, can we store the queue that was created on the MA from Beyond?
You could use quick capture.
Quick capture.
So the movements, like DMX movements, aren't going to be saved, but a look would be saved. Just because those movements are continuously
and
updated.
Matteo, we've also implemented CITP protocol, so you can visualize your cues on the console as well now.
Yeah, so you can, all of your types of effects parameters. So if we want to just do, a tilt, because that's nice and easy. We have this tilt, and it's nice and smooth. If you were to do it without the server, so actually I can show you. Let's make a nice look that'll make this easy to see. So we'll change the size, shapers size to be, let's say 70 and 70, and then we'll change this gobo to be gobo 1, so it's just a circle. And those are moving up and down. And if we go back to our effect, we can make our high value be, say, 50. And we'll make our negative value negative 50. So this motion here is a pretty fast motion, and it's nice and smooth. It's about the frame rate of the cue itself. But if I turn off physics, then you'll see they're no longer as smooth as they were, because it's at the speed of the software instead of, or it's the speed of DMX and not the speed of lasers. So
and that, I mean, that becomes pretty important from a design standpoint, especially on larger tours. You don't want to have that choppy movement across your projectors. You want it to be really smooth and fluid.
Yeah, so you're not at the limit. This is with it off, and this is with it on. It might be hard to see because we're streaming at 30 FPS. So that's, going to be a little bit harder to see. But basically, our output inside of Beyond is at 50 frames per second for this circle. But if we're doing it by ArtNet, the position movement is only going to be 30 FPS, or based on your console's output. And ArtNet really only limits, I think it's maximums at 40. So cues that are at a really high frame rate are going to just do a lot better. And let's say if we change this to pan, and we can just take these positions down.
Another way to get really smooth effects, colors, positions is also using the effects of Beyond. So Beyond is calculating the effect, and you just trigger the effect over DMX. So there's nothing to do with the refresh rate of the DMX values itself.
Exactly. So if you wanted to make
trigger a complete
offsets,
effect instead of creating the effect from your desk with DMX values.
Right. So if you have multiple programmers, you can also just say, well, if there's laser programmer can say, all right, well, I made this effect in this. Here's the ID for that effect, and it uses the effects grid, the quick effects grid, to do that. And so you don't have to worry about. You can do both. You could use a console engine. You could use your. You could use the engine in Beyond, and everything will be, smooth and do exactly what you think it should do.
So we've gotten a few requests here in the comments asking us to play back the show. Do you think we can loop it back one more time, Lyra?
Yeah, for sure. And the other great thing about Beyond Server, thank you for the segue, is that I can clear my programmer, go back into Beyond without any trouble, no changing of the FB4s, and play the show. And I think we're muted on the system, but that's fine.
With myself, I just can't understand. I say one thing and then do another. My life is set without a plan. If only I could live for the future instead of living in the now. Let's go back and try and do it right. Who said we can't? Let's make the time to work it out. I know that I can do better with the help from someone who knows just what went wrong. Let's start again. Let's start again. Let's start again. innocence has left me blind, blind from what is right. And now I've fallen in a state of mind. If only this is something I can fight. I try my best to put things right, but it's easier said than done. I need to reconstruct my mind, start again and put the pieces back to one. Oh, let's go back and try and do it right. Who said we can't? Let's make the time to work it out. That I can do better with the help from someone who knows just what went wrong. Let's start again. Let's start again. Let's start again.
Hope you guys enjoyed the encore presentation of the show there. So we're going to open it back up for questions for a bit longer. I see Red Walks asked a question right here, and he's asking if in our queue list we make sure that all single queues are BPM related and not time related.
If he's referencing timeline and beyond, then almost all of my queues in timeline are going to be static. They're not going to move at all. All of my motion for all of this is done inside of the tracks itself, which are, in that case, time-based animations. But almost all of them, the only time that sometimes I don't is if there's a wave, but almost all of these queues will be completely static, and all of that motion is done inside the timeline. So all the motions you see in the show are just done there. If you're talking about beyond server, then you'd still want to do it BPM based, because you could still tap in the BPM and do stuff that way if you wanted to do it. It's just like operating live, but it's from the console instead.
Want to make a quick note here as well, everyone. So I see a few questions in here asking for some input on like basic beyond timeline programming questions and things like that. Just a note, we've got a ton of new videos online, one being our new quick hints. You're going to see the intermediate hints coming out here pretty soon. But these are going to be great tutorials you guys can watch to get quick and easy answers to common questions. So if you're wondering about some basic timeline programming things, basic live control, basic setup and stuff, definitely check out those quick hints. We're going to post a link in the feed here so you can grab those as well. But yeah, awesome place to start to get to build a real foundation for your own personal programming skills.
Yeah, there's a quick hints in the basic series of timeline. It's about 7 minutes, and it goes through every single technical function of the beyond timeline area, and so that'll help you answer a lot of the questions that you may have will probably be answered there.
So we're right at about an hour now, guys. Any more questions coming in from the group that you guys would like answered?
And I'm just gonna nip through the show here and just see if I can find some cool looks.
And like we were saying earlier, send us some feedback. We'd love to know what you guys want to see from live streams like this. It's quiet here as well. We've got a lot of free time to kind of put this content out. So if there's a specific idea you have for a live stream, something you want to see, shoot us an email, info@pangolin.com. And we'll be happy to take those into considerations when we're making future live streams. As well, we're going to have some more personalized webinars coming pretty soon. These are going to go even deeper in depth, giving you access to more tips and tricks and tools on how to get the most from your laser projectors as well as Pangolin control products. And pretty soon we're going to be launching some training courses here at our Orlando studio where you can actually fly down and work directly with Lyra in our support department, as well as Alexei, the developer of Beyond, and get a more personalized training as well.
Yeah, we really want to focus on, we're here to help you guys through this because obviously we know it's such a rough situation that we want to focus on education. We want to focus on improving our processes. And so hopefully when we come out of this, we're better programmers, we're better business people, and we can bounce right back into this.
Main point, we're here to give you guys some skills to pay the bills, and when we get out of this thing, let's see some badass laser shows out in the field.
And I'm around, so if you want to hit me up during this time, I'm a little bored too.
Lyra at pangolin.com.
Yeah, you can email
Francesco at pangolin.com.
And we're happy to.
And on the same note, like we said earlier, if you've got some lasers at home, shoot a couple videos. Show us some of the shows you're making or some of the content you're making at home. Will Kent, a couple weeks ago, put up a great photo of some at-home programming he was doing at his own home studio. And, you don't need a fancy or huge studio to do this. Set them up in your living room and have a laser night with the wife or the family,
This is a hilariously small space for the amount of laser power we have in here. I'm basically in a cinefoil suit. So, so you can do it. Just make sure you're safe and set up your vein attenuation
share
maps.
feedback about what you're learning. It doesn't matter what level you are either. Whether you're brand new to lasers or you're a seasoned professional, we'd love to see what you're doing. We'd love to get feedback from you. So we encourage everybody to share in that respect.
Throw it in Powered by Pangolin and show your shows and what you're working on.
So Ian Davis, we're gonna take this as the last question for the day. It looks like things are kind of winding down. We appreciate the thanks as well on the post, Ian. So much respect there. We appreciate that. And so Ian's saying he was recently on tour with 24 projectors, and he noticed a frame drop on certain cues and not on others. He's wondering what's causing this, if it was too much network traffic, as well as what we would recommend to do to isolate the Beyond network outside of MA net and normal ArtNet, as they're using a different subnet. So
my comment on that probably
go ahead, take it, Cheese. Go.
I had basically a show with quite a few projectors and really heavy effects, and not a too strong computer available. It was at the end mostly the CPU power. 24 projectors, I don't expect any issues with the network, but it could be if the network is not
Could be a
optimum.
CPU issue though.
It might be a CPU issue. What would be a good thing for probably a next tutorial, it would be a little bit more technical, is how to optimize content. Because let's say a simple circle. A circle can be created in a shape editor, what would cause a lot more CPU than if we use a parametric image editor, what is a different editor and beyond, what is really optimized for low CPU users. So we really need to go into the queue content, see how the queue is built, which effects are used. Some effects, like a resampler effect, is really heavy on the CPU power, while you can use another plain resampler that might be maybe just as effective.
So it kind of depends on how you build the queue
processing.
out.
So it's really in the build processing of how to create the queues and how to optimize for that.
Yeah.
So I think that's a little bit too much to just go into detail for this
There's a
tutorial.
couple quick tips I have, which I like to tell people.
Real quick, Ian, shoot us an email to support@pangolin.com and let's check out your specific setup. If you still have that show file, we can take a look at that for you, and we might be able to send some feedback or ideas on how you might optimize that show for the future to reduce that. So
a couple quick tips I always give. If you can use parametric images, use it. In a day, we're going to be publishing the intermediate with quick hints. There is a quick hints on parametric images, so take a look at that. Use parametric images wherever possible. They're much more higher performance for your computer. They're easier to run for the computer, so when you have big shows like this, it's faster. Another thing you can do is make sure that the switches that you're using have high packets per second, because bandwidth doesn't matter nearly as much as packets per second throughput. So some cheap switches may have high bandwidth capability, but they don't have high packets per second. So that's something to take a look for. Another thing you can do quickly in an emergency situation, if you go to Tools and you go to Performance Tuning, there it is. You can adjust this, and you don't actually want to put it to just maximum and call it a day. If you can see here, I've put it to maximum, and now we have flicker issues, and you see tons of purple on the bottom. What you really are actually trying to do is optimize the way Beyond interacts with your computer. So sometimes taking it down to moderate or even economized will actually you'll have less lag, and you'll have better performance, because Beyond is expecting your computer to have lower performance, so there's an issue with the network. And there's a quick hints video that also talks about this, which is really going out tomorrow. So,
Well, I think that's about it, everyone. We're gonna wrap it up here. Like we said, we're gonna have some more content coming your way, more educational series and stuff. Again, want to thank our team here. Lyra, thank you very much for the amazing show. Calvin, thanks for getting all the video equipment together. Francesco, thanks for coming over from the Netherlands. We're not sure when Francesco's going to be able to go home, but we're certainly happy to have him here.
I will be here for a while.
And thanks to Josh, who's working behind the scenes right now, answering comments and stuff like that. And like we said, stay positive, guys. Stay safe. Stay motivated. Keep working out there. It's a downtime, but when we get through this,
and we're going to be pushing as hard as possible to get these.
We want to see some awesome shows from you guys once we get through this thing, and we will get through it. So keep a positive mentality. Do your best to refine your skill set and your craft, and your friends here at Pangolin. We're going to be there to back you up as much as we can. So, thanks to all of you for attending, and we'll see you on the next live stream.